No one realized it in the first second. There was no dramatic explosion visible from Earth, no warning siren screaming through space. Inside the spacecraft, there was only a sharp, unexpected sound, followed by lights turning on that were never meant to turn on together. For a brief moment, the crew said nothing. They stared at the instruments, hoping what they were seeing was a sensor glitch, a false reading, something that could be explained away. Then came the sentence that changed everything, spoken calmly, almost casually, as if saying it too loudly might make it real. "Houston, we've had a problem." In that instant, more than 300,000 kilometers from home, the United States lost control of a mission it thought was routine. Up until that day, Apollo 13 was not supposed to be history. It was not meant to inspire books or documentaries or lessons about human resilience. By 1970, going to the moon was no longer shocking. It was engineering, planning, schedules, checklists, a mission designed to work exactly as expected. But space has never cared about expectations. A damaged oxygen tank triggered a chain reaction no one had planned for. Power began to disappear. Oxygen started leaking into nothingness. One by one, the systems that kept 3 men alive began to fail. In a matter of minutes, the moon stopped being the destination. Survival became the only goal that mattered. On Earth, inside the control room of NASA in Houston, there was no shouting, no chaos. What settled over the room was something heavier and far more dangerous: clarity. The engineers understood immediately that this was a problem with no precedent. No simulation had ever covered this exact sequence of failures. No training scenario had prepared anyone to save a crew trapped inside a spacecraft that was slowly dying. And yet, no one stood up, no one walked away, because quitting was never part of the equation. The lunar module, a machine designed to support 2 astronauts for just 2 days, suddenly became humanity's lifeboat. It would now have to keep 3 men alive for nearly 4 days, with less power, less heat, and less oxygen than it was ever meant to provide. Every calculation made on Earth had to work the first time. There would be no second attempt, no corrections, no replacement parts. Whatever solution they found had to be built from what already existed, using imagination instead of resources. As oxygen levels dropped in space, ideas began to rise on the ground. Engineers pulled apart identical equipment, spreading components across tables and floors, trying combinations that were never meant to fit together. Tubes designed for one system were forced into another. Filters were redesigned on the spot. Procedures that had never been written were scribbled down, tested, rewritten, and tested again. Every decision carried the same silent weight. If this fails, they don't come home. Far above the Earth, inside the damaged spacecraft, Commander Jim Lovell and his crew followed instructions they had never practiced. The temperature dropped. Sleep became fragmented. Moisture from their breath condensed on the walls. There was no certainty that the improvised solutions would work. What they had instead was trust, not in the technology, which was clearly failing, but in the people behind the voices guiding them, step by step through the darkness. The journey back was slow, calculated, and unforgiving. Power had to be conserved at all costs. Every unnecessary movement was avoided. Every action was deliberate. The spacecraft drifted around the moon, not as explorers, but as survivors, using gravity itself as a tool. Time stretched. Minutes felt longer than hours. On Earth, engineers watched clocks and gauges, knowing that even a small mistake could compound into catastrophe. Then came the final risk, the one no one could fully measure. During the explosion, it was impossible to confirm whether the heat shield had been damaged. If it had, re-entry into Earth's atmosphere would be fatal. There would be no explosion visible from the ground, no final message, only silence. And silence in spaceflight usually means the worst has already happened. As the capsule plunged back toward Earth, communication disappeared exactly as expected. Seconds passed, then more seconds. In mission control, no one spoke. They waited, knowing there was nothing left to do but trust their work and the people who had carried it out under impossible pressure. Then the radio came back to life. The capsule had survived the heat. The calculations had held. The crew was alive. Apollo 13 never landed on the moon. By every original metric, the mission failed, and yet it became one of the greatest successes in American history, not because it achieved its objective, but because it revealed something far more important. When plans collapse, when systems fail, and when there is no clear answer, progress does not come from perfection. It comes from people who refuse to accept that failure is the end of the story. What saved Apollo 13 was not luck. It was not a miracle. It was the quiet discipline of engineers who stayed in their chairs, the courage of astronauts who followed instructions without knowing the outcome, and a shared belief that even when the path forward is unclear, moving forward together is better than standing still. Sometimes victory is not reaching the destination you planned. Sometimes victory is rewriting the definition of success in real time. And sometimes the greatest achievement is simply this: coming home.